So in today's video, we're going to be checking out the brand new Boss BCB pedalboard range. And in particular, I'm going to be building my new pedalboard with the BCB-90X. Now the team over at Boss was super kind to send out this new range early so we could do a video here on the channel. Now we've got a whole load of stuff we're going to go through in today's video, and let's begin. So this is what you get inside the box. You get a power supply for the internal power bricks so you can power up all of your pedals from a single plug. You also get a manual and getting started guide that's got some really cool suggestions in how you could lay out your BCB pedalboard. You also get a daisy chain power cable for powering all of your pedals with the internal power supply. And you also get a foam insert so you can attach your pedals to the board. So let's have a quick look and talk about the layout of this new pedalboard that I'm going to be building today. Now, it wasn't too long ago that I actually updated my pedalboard setup, so most of those pedals are going to transfer over onto this BCB-90X build. Now, for probably the past 3 years, my go-to pedalboard of choice has been the Pedal Train Classic Junior. And a major issue I had with that pedalboard was the lack of an integrated power supply. In order to power all of your pedals off a single power source, you had to use an external power supply that you would mount to the undercarriage of the pedalboard, and there was a few problems with this. Because of the lack of cable management channels, it meant all of the cables for each pedal were exposed, which meant I was experiencing a lot of snagging on the cables. They were frequently getting damaged and also becoming disconnected, which was really reducing the reliability of that pedalboard for me. And it also had a soft transportation case which compiled to this issue. Whereas with the BCB-90X, obviously it's a hard transportation case. It's got cable management channels underneath the foam insert, and it also has an integrated power supply. So this has resolved quite a lot of problems from a practicality standpoint with this new range of pedalboards. Now, there are a few ways we can go about attaching our pedals to the BCB-90X. Now, the first approach is very traditional, and you can just simply use Velcro. But the second way is by using Boss's foam solution. Now, me personally, I think there's a whole heap of benefits to using the foam. I have always hated, I don't know if you agree with this, but I hate attaching Velcro to my pedals. There's something about it that has always really irritated me. And with the foam, it offers you a Velcro-less solution. You can cut out the shapes of your pedals, slot them directly into the board, and this also means you can quick release your pedals theoretically. Let's say, for example, you use a lot of 500 series pedals from Boss, or a lot of stomp boxes from Boss, or other manufacturers that have very similar shaped pedals. You can cut those out inside of your foam, and then if you're constantly switching out your pedal board for different use cases, you can just throw them straight out the board without having to mess about disconnecting the Velcro, it becoming loose, having to replace that. Really maintenance-free solution that I think Boss has created here with the foam. So this is the plan for the pedals that we're going to be using. We're going to be running the Boss GT1000 core for all of my effects, my guitar amps, and we're also going to be using 2 Boss RC500s. Now, I'm also going to run a Boss OC5, and I'm also going to use a DD7 digital delay to showcase how we can use an effects loop on this board. And let's not forget the MXR EQ pedal to show that you can use other brands' pedals with this board. So now that we've spent the time to plan and prepare our BCB-90X, we can now begin actually constructing our pedal board. Now, I'm going to begin with the actual power cables for all of the individual pedals, because that is going to be covered up by the foam when we actually start to add the pedals onto the board. Now, the really cool thing about the BCB-90X is it's really easy to access the undercarriage of your pedal board. You just simply remove your foam, and then you can access all of the channels for all of the cables that you want to hide from the upper side of the board itself. Now, inside of the box that's provided with the BCB-90X is a power supply for the pedal board itself, and also a daisy chain cable. Now, we can power up to 10 individual 9-volt pedals with this daisy chain cable. Obviously, the BCB-90X does support 9 pedals with the stock foam layout, and I'm obviously not going to be using all 10 in today's video. Now, I did make an error in my BCB-90X announcement video from NAMM 2021. I accidentally said that I thought the GT1000 core required more than a 9-volt power source. Well, fortunately, it doesn't. It does supply of a 9-volt power source, so that means every single pedal I'm going to be adding onto my board in today's video will be powered by an integrated power supply, and also will run off a single power cable, which is really convenient. Now I went ahead and tested all of the pedals and the power just to make sure that they all turned on successfully before I began building my final board. Now something I had to do before I added the foam into my pedal board was I had to actually cable manage the daisy chain cable. Right, so now we have connected all of our pedals to the power supply, and as you can see, GT1000 core is booting up correctly, and obviously the other pedals will boot up once we have connections going into them to turn them on. Now what I'm going to do here is quite unique in terms of my actual cable routing. Now for demonstration purposes, I've added this digital delay pedal just to illustrate how you can combine a effects loop with the onboard junction boxes and the GT1000 core for a very convenient plug and play solution. Now what I have done, I've also got two Boss RC500s, which may seem a little bit excessive, but I'll explain why I've done this in terms of how I'm combining these with Ableton Live. Now you may notice that I haven't cut anything out in this region of my foam on my BCB-90X, and that's because I want to illustrate the point that you can combine other brand pedals with this Boss pedal board. It's not like it's exclusive only to Boss pedals, such as the Stumpbox pedals, the 500 series pedals. You can use other manufacturers' pedals super easy with the cutout foam especially. You can just simply cut out the shapes and slot them in over here. Now you obviously know we've got loads of extra daisy chain cables that I've hidden away over here that we could combine with other brand cables to create quite a flushed out pedal board. You can see I can fit these MXR pedals on perfectly fine, have access to them. Even with these pedals, they're not getting in the way with these foot switches. We could even go one step further and start adding extra pedals over here if really required, because we do have enough power to supply these extra pedals. Now I'm going to go and put this EQ pedal in over here just to show how we're going to connect the chain between the guitar effects strictly over here. Now, I am going to leave this uncut out because on my personal pedal board, I don't want to add anything here at all. I may in the future add an external foot switch like the Boss FS7, but I'm just going to leave this how it is for now because I haven't quite decided what I want to do with this extra real estate. Now, Boss were really cool and they sent me through a whole load of new cables to check out for today's video. Now, they've provided some of the new premium pancake design patch cables along with some of their solderless patch cables. Now, these solderless patch cables are very interesting. You can create a custom length for your patch cable. You can see here I have so much cable, it's unreal. In fact, I actually scrimped on it thinking I didn't have as much as I had, and I could have really been a bit more lenient with the length that I was cutting for this particular cable. And then from this point, once you've cut it to length, you just simply attach the connector, screw it on with the provided tools in the box, and you're up and running. You've created a custom cable with very minimal effort, and you're going to have a super tidy pedal board. So I've got some of the new premium Boss patch cables over here, and you can see how small the pancake design connections are, which is really going to allow you to get multiple pedals really close to one another. This is perfect for just building a pedal board in general and getting some really high quality cables, even if you're not interested in using the BCB-90X. Now, this is going to be a prime example of how these junction boxes operate over here and why this is a really cool feature for plug and play capabilities within your setup. Now, you can see here we have an input and we also have a send. Now, this is referring to basically whatever you input in here, such as your guitar cable, that will then be sent into these pedals over here. So you can send the audio out of this junction box through your pedals and back into the return track and then out of the output. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to connect one patch cable to the send, so that's sending the input over here, and then that's going to go into the first pedal within our chain. You can see how tidy these cables are looking already. And then from the output of the Boss OC5, we're going to go into the input of this EQ. So we're going into the input of this EQ over here. We'll also add the power cable as well. Now, obviously, I don't intend to use the MXR on my final board because the GT1000 core can do everything. It's got built-in EQs into the effects chain. It also has a built-in delay that I do not need the DD7 for, but I just want to illustrate how we can set up an effects loop. Now, from the output of this EQ, we're going to go out from the EQ and then into the GT1000 core. So we'll find the input, so we have a mono input. We don't need stereo for today's example. So now we have got that set up perfectly fine. This is a perfect example here of how small these connections are on these pancake design cables. Look how close they are. They're absolutely crazy. Seriously, really impressed with these patch cables. So now let's take a look at connecting the effects loop. Now obviously the GT1000 core does have the ability to run a stereo effects loop because it has two send and return channels. So this means we can run a stereo send and a stereo return back into the GT1000 core. And then the master output of our GT1000 core can then be routed into our left and right return on our junction boxes, and then it can go out of the master output of the BCB-90X, showcasing how, with a digital amplifier like the GT1000 core, you can have a fully integrated system literally running off 2 output cables with this BCB-90X pedal board. So now let's talk about my overall thoughts of building my new pedal board in the BCB-90X. Now, the actual build experience inside of the BCB-90X took me by surprise by how easy it actually was. Now, for me personally, in the past when I've been building pedal boards, there's always been something that's been sacrificed to the big grand plan that I envisioned inside my head. I couldn't quite place a pedal where I imagined it to go, just something really disappointing of that nature. Whereas with the BCB-90X, for the first time ever, the pedal board actually looked exactly how I imagined it in my head. With the foam cutouts, it means you can pretty much place a pedal wherever you like on the flat surface of the BCB-90X. And additionally, on top of that, because I had the solderless Boss patch cables and also the new Pancake patch cables, this finally allowed me to get pedals really close to one another and also have really long patch cables of a custom length to keep it as tidy as possible on the surface of the pedal board. Now, there are a few areas that I do want to raise that I do think could be improved on the BCB-90X, so you can get my overall thoughts on the board. Now, the first area is when it comes to actually cutting the foam. Now, although this is a very easy and self-explanatory experience, something I would have loved to see Boss provide inside of the accessories would have been a few paper templates that you could have put on the foam itself, drew around them, and then just cut. Because the problem I had was, obviously, there are already cut markings for standard Boss Stompbox design pedals, which is fantastic if you're using those. But if you want to intend to use stuff like the 500 series, like I did in today's video, you have to sort of cut around and measure the pedal yourself, and it took a little bit longer than it would have if Boss had provided a few templates for their 200 series pedals, 500 series pedals, all of the types of pedals you may want to include on this board. Then you could have just cut those out, threw them on the foam, cut around them, and you'd have been up and running much faster. It took me a while to cut the foam, a lot longer than I expected it to. The second thing that I didn't like too much as well was the actual cable management of the daisy chain cables for the internal power supply. Obviously, we have the cable channels, which is the best cable management I've personally ever had on a pedal board. But when it came to sort of keeping the daisy chain cable under control, I did have to get sellotape out and tape it down in particular areas so it wasn't pushing the foam up and making my board look unneat. It just made my life a little bit easier when it came to putting the pedals onto the board. Not too major of an issue, but it would have been nice if they maybe had some little cable ties built into the actual cable channels just to make this part of the build a little bit simpler. Now, I also received a new BCB-90X from Boss, along with a whole heap of brand new cables from their new premium cable range. So if you want to see me check those out in the future and join me for those videos, be sure to like and subscribe and turn the notification bell to on so you don't miss them. But as always, I've been Ben Rowlands. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.